sat there before?
Lots of people have sat here before.
Who sat there today?
Hey, Mark. Mark. Mark Lehman.
Yeah.
Can you come here for a second?
I was going to come to you after I finished doing other stuff.
I'm sorry. I'm drafting the questions for this commissioner who we're going to do a Zoom with at 1 p.m. Was there anything you wanted specifically to ask him, or was doing kind of a wide question on all your the areas that the district includes? What do you see for storms there? What are you hearing from residents in the area? What are your thoughts on the I know the moratorium.
Moratorium, they
On hold.
well, yeah, they decided to move it to a special meeting that's going to be happening January 14th.
Oh, it will. Okay. I don't think
Yeah.
we need January 14th.
Yeah.
And then this last other article we didn't have now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
November 19th, the last one that I see that we have out.
I saw a news journal article.
Okay, so the moratorium will be discussed in,
Yeah, it's just, I mean,
maybe we ask them how do you think a moratorium is needed?
yeah. So, do you think that's the right way to go? I know a lot of residents wanted it, and then if so, how long?
Is the right direction? How long? What do you hope comes out of this article? Okay. That's questions. And the more you ask me, the more you're gonna
Because basically this town hall is just for any state about water.
Yeah, and it has nothing really to do with water. I mean, it's like for hours.
But it'll be discussed, I'm sure.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, flooding and other issues. So who knows? They just come here and be like, I don't want the vape shop by my house. You know?
Yeah, after flooding's gonna make a big thing.
But anywho, was the Brower something good?
Yeah, it's good.
Just so you know, I didn't do your test.
I wonder why that email came so often. I didn't even see the email. When John told me, I was like, what? Because I mean, I don't check.
I emailed him like Wednesday or Monday, and then finally I asked why I was calling him. So like, yeah, his best for text. So I texted him at 10:30, and then I called him after not hearing from him for 3 hours. I'm sitting there like won't go back, and it was yes, where good five, and it was. And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, I don't know where good five came from. It should say how. I'm like, what? So I just avoid it and I go, it's all good. Where would be the best place to meet you? Our reporter could be there at 9. He goes, sounds great. Thanks for the response. Like, but I'm just like,
Yeah, maybe he's wrong.
I didn't think we're fine. And then how? I felt really uncomfortable. I was like, okay, avoid that. Anyway, so Chris said she would help me with doing this interview. We'll get into it and I'll send you the
Yeah. Well,
All right. Good morning. Good Wednesday morning. Happy Wednesday, folks tuning in today. News 6 meteorologist David Nazario back in the Digital Weather Center for your morning update, your situational awareness, your digital dose of weather situational awareness to go about your day today and over the next week or two. We're going to be talking a little bit more about what we delved into yesterday. Bit more of a breakdown specifically on the implications that this La Nina style winter could have not only on us here in central Florida, but the rest of the southeast United States. A pretty night and day difference than what we saw last year. If you hearken back to this time, 2023, we had already gone through a nocturnal tornado outbreak, almost like a Milton 1.0, a low pressure system that manifested itself in the Bay of Campeche the southwest Gulf of Mexico, tried to become an organized tropical feature, but ended up coming ashore as a torn apart, sheared, almost mid-latitude type of low pressure with fronts attached to it that sparked off between 20 to 30 overnight tornadoes for central and northern Florida. That was responsible by our El Nino weather pattern that was in place over the equatorial Pacific waters that bled over into creating a lot of shear and energy for these storms to rock throughout winter and the early periphery of spring before we weaken down out of that El Nino, hung out in that neutral Enzo throughout this year, and now we are moving into a La Nina winter. So before we get into all that, let's set the stage here. We're going to move on over to our water vapor satellite shot. First and foremost, before we go any further, I just want to say good morning. Thank you for taking some time out of your Wednesday morning to our News 6 Plus viewers, as well as those of you tuning in over on the News 6 YouTube channel. It means a lot to have you along for this morning dose of weather situational awareness. So looking at the water vapor, there's a few different things going on that I want you to notice. First and foremost, we have that deep trough over the eastern half of the United States still. That is why this morning was probably our coldest morning in a very long time across much of central Florida and pretty much the eastern half of the lower 48. I'll go ahead and stop the loop for y'all, and we'll go and bring out our handy dandy pen tool so we can start to get a little more creative with this. Also, let me make sure that I have my timer going. There we go. Excellent. So this is the trough that I'm looking at. There's that first big old bowling ball style trough that's just continuing to force feed us with polar air from Canada, the upper tier United States, the Great Lakes, who are also currently battling what looks to be another baroclinic system or low pressure system that could be dumping increased lake effect snow and rainfall for the Northeast, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and parts of Ontario, Quebec in Canada. I'll get that ink out of the way, and I'll go ahead and drag the cursor up just a little bit, bring the pen back. This is the low pressure in question with our deep trough extending down to the south. I also want you to look closely at what's happening down here. This is a very interesting setup, and I'll go ahead and zoom us down in again. This here is likely your STJ. To throw an acronym at you first thing in the morning. This is your subtropical jet ejecting out of the equatorial Pacific. So this was actually what was pretty much in place through October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, from end of 2023 into 2024. That's what El Nino spawned in. Right now, we're still hanging out on a cool neutral in terms of our El Nino Southern Oscillation. Enzo for short down there in the Pacific, driving that subtropical energy. We also have a bit of breakaway polar front jet energy and an upper low that's situated over the desert southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, that's continuing to help ramp up that jet stream. I'll zoom us on in so we can get a bit of a closer look, and I'll also take us down in for a bird's eye view of exactly what's happening, because this is not El Nino driven in this case. So our polar front jet, which is a totally different jet stream as the name would imply, that is going to be the separation between your polar air from up north near the poles and your not-so-polar air on the south side of it. The jet stream itself is driven by that gradient of temperatures. On the south side of where I have my arrow drawn, you have your subtropical jet moving through, and this whole region here is going to be what's called a shared energy point. You have polar front jet energy coming down across the western seaboard right in through here, and then you have your subtropical jet energy spewing up out of the central and eastern Pacific, and that tethering point here is what's helping to create an upper low or a bit of a cold pocket over the Four Corners states, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and that low pressure, the L I have drawn right over Arizona right now. So their area is probably feeling a bit of that disturbed weather as well, just like we had a couple days ago when this first front had rocked its way through our viewing area. We're going to transition over to the infrared satellite shot. I accidentally didn't change the windshield at the top, so this is no longer my water vapor. This is going to be infrared, and this is a wonderful satellite shot because you can see all that cloud cover associated with that next nudge of jet energy coming across Texas, parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, getting into the northern half of Mississippi now. Their cloud coverage is increasing, but for the mid-Atlantic, Virginia, south through Miami and Fort Lauderdale into the Keys, you can see we are skies clear, very few clouds. Looks like maybe some upper-level clouds left over thanks to high pressure and the movement of that cold air coming off the coastline. And I'll draw it in for you. I'll stop the loop again. I get so fascinated by this stuff, and it's so neat to be able to see it. Look at all these lines, these streets of clouds, as they're called, just spewing off the eastern seaboard of the U.S. That is what's called advection, A-D-V-E-C-T-I-O-N, advection. It's the movement of air. Regardless of the air, advecting your air means you're moving air whenever you hear the term advection. So I think it's pretty neat that you can still see that, but we have that large plume of additional modified energy that's getting ready to work its way through the southern plains and start to influence our weather just a little bit. Probably going to maintain itself over the Panhandle, the Big Bend area of Florida. Jacksonville, St. Augustine might get in on a little of the action, but Central Florida, we're not going to see much in the way of significant cloud cover, let alone rain chances. Moving on over to our national temps, this is what we have out there right now. You can see because of that jet energy, the subtropical jet working its way into the southern plains and Dixie Alley. Notice how there is that bit of relatively warmer air tucked down in there from Wichita down to the south. Look at the gradient that's going on even as far north as Omaha into Sioux Falls. You go from 53 in Oklahoma City, 46 in Wichita, down to 14 in Bismarck. And you can see where that cold pocket and that jet energy out west is definitely helping to bring down our temperatures over the Rockies. Florida slowly but surely starting to rebound, but then there's the outer skeleton or the outline of your trough still in place, pushing more and more of that cold air down towards the south and east, further into the Atlantic. This is a quick glance at your temperature anomaly. I once again need to go back through and adjust this. In fact, I'll just go ahead and turn that windshield off. This is no longer for Monday through Wednesday. This is now going to be Wednesday through to the weekend. That's why, if you notice, we have those blue anomalies out to the west, and we have our reds and yellows and oranges making a return for the east, and especially the Ohio-Mississippi Valley, because the pattern is going to be changing. Right now, we have a bit of a lopsided appearance. If I had to draw the jet in for you, the jet stream itself would probably look something like this. Got a trough coming in through there, and then a bit of a ridge trying to blossom, and then we have our trough over the east. Kind of like a W out there in terms of your PFJ, the polar front jet. And what's going to end up happening is, as this continues to move off like a freight train or a snake off towards the east, if you guys have ever played Centipede or anything like that way back in the old retro arcade days, that's going to continue to modify the pattern marching west to east, and this ridge here is eventually going to position itself over the eastern half of the U.S., allowing this trough to dig in, manifest itself a little bit more prevalently out there for the west. And we're going to switch back into a warm out here for a little bit, cold out west, before once again that'll come rocking through and changing our big picture weather pattern. This is also reflected very well in the temperatures. I'll go ahead and get my big old head out of the way so you can see a little bit clearer. Watch how the warm-up begins. We get a little bit dose, an additional dose, I should say, of cold air because of that response in the jet. But then watch as we go through the weekend, and especially next week. Look at all that surging warm air down there across the south. Look at the difference. There's that reverse in the pattern. We had a big trough out here to start this week and a bit of a ridge out west. I'll clear the ink out, and now you can definitely see plain as day. There's your There's your trough. I lost my pen tool there. Trough, and now we have a ridge building out east, which is going to help to just push warm, modified, tropical, subtropical air across the southeast. And that's going to be kind of where I'm watching for maybe our first bout of more scattered coverage of severe weather. We're tracking a feature out there that could possibly develop near the Colorado, Texas area. kind of splitting the difference between our two regimes, the source regions where our low pressure systems will typically form this time of year before ejecting off of the higher terrain of the Rockies towards the east and eventually curving up towards the east-northeast. Opposite of what tropical cyclones do, you're used to probably hearing west and west-northwest before going back towards the northwest. Notice how everything has a bit of a pattern and a repetition to it. With these mid-latitude features over the U.S., they're moving east with that jet. Tropical systems closer to the equator, they're moving west with the trade winds that are coming out of the east, blowing those things off towards the west. And eventually, once they get close enough, these features here, driving our warm and cold fronts, that's what helped to pick them up, gravitate them to the north, and either curve them away from us, or unfortunately, like we saw with Raphael, and or I should say with Milton, curve it back into a major landmass. All right, we're going to get ready to take our first break here very soon, but I just wanted to rock through the clouds and rainfall with the surface analysis overlaid so you can see the couple different features that we were just discussing using our jet stream as the common denominator, throwing a little bit of math at you on this wonderful Wednesday morning. So this is where we sit currently. This is Wednesday, about 40 minutes ago, 11 o'clock in the morning. High pressure still situated over Georgia, Florida, with that developing low down there in Texas, sparking off some rain, showers, and embedded thunderstorms. Isolated right now. I don't think they're calling for a risk for severe weather at this point in time. There could be some bouts of stronger thunderstorms. We'll have to see what happens throughout the rest of the day today. Then we'll fast forward into about Friday time frame. There you have it. You can see that next dose of cold air that's currently working its way down from the Great Lakes, the Midwest, makes its way down here into Florida. But notice that we lose a lot of the punch. We get the cold air, we get the dry air, but with dry air, there's a lack of moisture, a lack of rainfall. Once we get back from the break, I'll zoom us down in and take us in close to see exactly what it is the theme of this video is truly about. And that's how the La Nina winter is going to possibly put us back into a significant drought phase for not only Florida, but much of the Southeast. I have a couple of third-party other website graphics pulled up that we'll start the next end of the brief with after our quick 2-minute intermission there to show you that surprisingly, after a destructive hurricane season here in the state of Florida, we're actually already back into a moderate level drought for areas that were affected by both Debbie and Helene and the amount of rainfall that they produced. Debbie dropped copious amounts of rainfall, didn't really get up and move at all until about maybe 2 to 4 days after its landfall. And we all know what Major Hurricane Helene did up there for the Big Bend area, which was catastrophic to say the least. So coming up after the quick 2-minute, don't go anywhere. I promise we'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit about the already slowly building drought, how this could persist through the winter time, and, because it's me after all, a sneak peek at the 2025 hurricane season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Quick 2-minute break. See you again shortly. And we're back. 2 minutes goes by so quick, I'm not even going to lie to you. I'll yawn and maybe take a sip of my water or coffee that's here, and next thing you know, we're back. So this is a current look for those of you still tuned in. Hopefully you stuck around for a little bit. This is a look at the U.S. Drought Monitor for just the state of Florida here. And if you notice, we are already starting to get into the abnormally dry, if not moderate drought for parts of the Panhandle and up closer to the mouth of the St. Johns, which is astonishing because that's where we saw a lot of our river flooding with Helene and Milton after that. But also, that's where a lot of the rainfall from Debbie accumulated during the month of August. If you recall, Debbie made landfall right around the Panhandle of Florida area and then kind of just got stuck in the mud up there and was spinning its wheels and drifted towards the east, towards the Jacksonville, St. Augustine area. And now, as we wander into the dryness of the tail end of fall and potentially wintertime altogether, this could probably become a bit more dangerous than what's already currently on the board. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring us over to the CanSIPS model here. This is going to be one of our main weather climate feature, I guess you could say climate models, if you will. We'll go ahead and go to a zoomed in perspective so you can see exactly what it is that I'm looking at. This is going to be the month-to-month total accumulated precip. Now, the kicker with this is it's an anomaly. So it's not going to show us total precip for the month. It'll show us where it is that the model is forecasting either above average total precip or below average total precip, being rain, sleet, snow, precip being all-encompassing. This is valid for the month of December, and if you notice, we still have a lot of activity down there in the Caribbean. Nothing tropical. That's going to be the tail end of all of these frontal boundaries just getting hung up in the terrain of Central America. But then look out there over the United States, especially the eastern U.S. and Florida. We're into those deeper shades of yellow, almost borderline orange at this point, showing that the precipitation to potential almost got tongue-tied there. The rainfall totals for the month are going to be much lower than what we would typically see during, say, for instance, an El Nino winter. Doesn't get much better into January, February, or even March. If you notice, all the way through to March, we're looking at below average total rainfall accumulated through the 30-some-odd day period, month to month. Now, this doesn't, go as far as saying we're not going to get any rain, but in terms of what this means, generally speaking, on average, we're going to see a lot less rainfall than we did last winter, last spring, and especially when the tropics were aggravated, sending almost everything it possibly could in our direction. So kind of good news for our folks who had to battle with flooding, whether it be along the coast, along a river crossing, nearest to a large body of water, or just from the heavy rainfall induced by our thunderstorm season and the tropics. But also bad news for a lot of us who already need the rain. I can personally say my lawn is starting to brown over, and I have to start getting back in the rhythm of I got to crank the sprinklers at the start of the day and crank the sprinklers at the end of the day because we're just not getting much rain. This is, however, where it gets a little more interesting. So check this out. April, May, notice we're finally starting to get out of that, I guess you could say, model-derived drought. Look what's happening in the Caribbean and across the main development region of the Atlantic into June. Already starting to see a huge difference in the signals that we saw for this June for 2025. And there's going to be a little bit more to that song and dance I want to break down for you all, much later in time. Let's get away from this hurricane season, and then we'll talk exactly what type of signals, things we're looking for in the long range and the large scale that give us hints and little breadcrumbs towards the next hurricane season. But I'll tell you the truth, myself and Jonathan Kagas here, meteorologist Jonathan Kagas, already have some working theories of what the next season could look like and just how bizarre it could possibly be even after what we already saw this hurricane season being as weird as it is. Finally, I know it looks a little lopsided to the right. That's just because of the way the screen is cropped. I wanted to show you the ENSO predictions of all of our different statistical and dynamic models. And if you look, we're squeaking into that weak La Nina as we go through December, January, and maybe portions of February, somewhere around Valentine's Day or getting towards the last week of February. We're forecasting right now a slow but steady rebound back to a cool neutral to a neutral through the hurricane season, where it matters for us here in Florida in terms of potential landfalls or strong systems trying to work their way towards us through the season. It would start where you see at the bottom of the chart AMJ, MJJ, and JJA. What that means is April, May, June, July, or June, July, August. They go in 3-month increments because it just helps to increase the margin of error. This way, if the model is very much so out to lunch like they kind of were last year, so take this with a hefty grain of salt. I let everyone know that this is very subject to change. We're looking at an annual forecast, let alone, trying to forecast for our own backyard within a 5 to 10 day window. We're looking at an annual forecast here, and these models struggled big time with the onset of La Nina. Per the preseason forecasts for this hurricane season, we should have been in a strong La Nina by now, having gotten started back in June, July. So it goes to show these are not gospel, but we're going to continue to watch the trends. And truthfully, the trends are your friends, to quote another famous meteorologist here in the Florida area. And where we sit currently would suggest we're probably not going to go back down into a deeper La Nina. We could very well rebound with the increase in our Pacific trade winds, our easterly winds cutting across the equatorial regions that'll help to kind of bring back the water temps a little bit, bring them back to that neutral phase in comparison to going full La Nina or full El Nino. But now, with that being said, let's get back to the actual main show. I'm going to show us our possible rain chances down here in the southeast, looking at a zoomed-in perspective of Florida and the rest of the Gulf Coast. You can see where that low pressure is being induced by that area of subtropical jet energy ripping across Texas, Louisiana, up towards the east-northeast. As we go forward in time and we get that next frontal boundary, watch what happens. So lots of pretty good showers and storms for Louisiana, New Orleans, Biloxi, Gulfport, Mississippi, getting into Mobile, Alabama, maybe getting a little spicy in Pensacola with those post-frontal winds and some colder showers as we go through Thursday afternoon. But this is what we're concerned about as we go through this La Nina winter, eventually neutral winter together, ladies and gentlemen. Watch what happens into actual Central Florida. Front kind of gets lost. It gets hung up. It gets stuck. It kind of fizzles. And we get some increased cloud coverage, maybe some light rain here and there, like we saw with this last frontal system that came through. If you guys recall, we saw some scattered coverage that we had briefed in the morning show for Polk, Osceola, and then into Brevard County, portions of southern Orange County, and then we had that swath induced by a trough to the north, but it was rocking through. It was moving so fast, we didn't get a whole lot of accumulation from it, and it was more light rain, drizzle, maybe intermittent moderate where it came down just a little heavier, but nothing too crazy, nothing that would actually pond the roadways, let alone create any kind of destruction or anything that would be detrimental to your day-to-day or evening commute for the Friday night. Could be the same song and dance with this system. And then we go further in time. This is what I'm going to be watching. This here. That could possibly be as we go into the weekend. And then next week, looking at the potential for severe up across Dixie Alley, the upper Gulf coastline, maybe the panhandle of Florida. So I know not necessarily in our Central Florida viewing area, but if you may have friends, family, loved ones, you name it alike, up in the panhandle area or somewhere in the southeast altogether, we're really going to be tracking this next low pressure system that's expected to pop up around the southern plains and move off towards the east. We have a really good warm conveyor of moisture and warmer temperatures coming up out of the Gulf, originating back down in the Caribbean, meeting up with that next big punch of polar cold air that's going to move its way out of the Rockies down in the low levels and scoop all that warm, moist air out ahead of it up. And if you all probably put the puzzle pieces together, that's what typically gets you your tornadoes, your damaging straight line winds, as well as hail. We're back into that time of the year. You can see it is expected to maintain itself through the panhandle into the Big Bend before, again, Central Florida just kind of loses it. It falls apart. We get a little bit of a reinforcing nudge back behind it, and maybe Middle of next week, Wednesday, we get some light to moderate rain showers here in Central Florida with the passage of our next big push of cold air before we cool back down again as we get into the middle portions of December. I don't know about y'all watching right now, but saying middle portions of December is crazy to me. I feel like I was just saying the middle portions of October, spooky season, and Halloween, and now next thing you know, the final countdown to Christmas, 20 days away. Only 20 days away. We're about to be into the teens already, counting down to Christmas Eve. So if you haven't gotten your plans all situated, holiday travel, vacation, gifting, planning with the family and friends, I definitely say get on the ball quick, because even I need to get up to speed with my family and loved ones, because shoot, time is just, as they would say, ripping by. Finally, last but not least, before we wrap everything up, I just want to show you in total, this is next Tuesday morning, going into Wednesday and eventually Thursday once that front is finally through our area in Central Florida. Look at the total rainfall accumulation here. Really not much. This is as we get into early Thursday morning. We're looking at, I would honestly say, trace amounts of rain through Kissimmee, Orlando, the attractions, Leesburg, Lakeland, even on the East Coast, Brevard, Volusia County, maybe up into Palm Coast, seeing a little more than half an inch. This is definitely going to be more of a northern Florida threat in terms of actually seeing any kind of thunderstorms or moderate level thunderstorm rainfall activity. Notice the rainfall piling up there near Tyndall Air Force Base, Panama City, Apalachicola Bay up there in the west side of the Big Bend and the panhandle of Florida. But here in Central Florida, not a whole lot. And I hate to say it, but this could very well be the kind of the cadence we follow as we go through the rest of December, through Christmas, New Year's, into January. And then February, I want to say, at least for now, is going to be the wild card. We'll have to see exactly what happens in February with that Enzo forecast to see if we start to nudge back towards that neutral phase or if we stay La Nina. We actually want a bit more neutral for the winter time. This way we can get a little extra rainfall across us in the southeast, as opposed to it favoring the northern portions of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, etc., and then moving up into the Appalachians, missing us altogether. But with that being said, I don't see any comments over on the News 6 YouTube channel, so we're going to go ahead and start closing out this Wednesday rendition of your Digital Weather Metcon, giving you your daily dose of situational awareness on all things weather in your neck of the woods and your local neighborhood. We'll see you again tomorrow before I switch over to the evening shows, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you'd like to continue to keep up with me, David, and your situational awareness on the Central Florida weather big picture, feel free to check us out not only tomorrow again at 11:30, but then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with your evening shows here on News 6 over on the broadcast side of things. Of course, with some digital content peppered in there. So, folks, I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. I hope your week has been solid up to this point and continues to get even better as we get closer and closer to another weekend. A little more on the mild side. Temperatures are going to start to rebound, but nothing too crazy. And that's all, folks. Until next time, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.